Welcome. Relax your body. Close your eyes. You are about to learn English while you sleep. Listen calmly. Don't worry about remembering everything. Your mind is open. Your English is improving. Let's start learning with real-based story. It was an ordinary Monday morning. The kind of morning where the sun rose gently over the rooftops, spreading golden light across the quiet streets of Cambridge. The air was fresh, cool, and a little crisp. Birds were singing softly from the trees that lined the university campus, and the clock tower in the distance had just struck 9. Students were hurrying across the courtyard, some carrying heavy bags filled with books, others clutching cups of coffee to stay awake after a long night of study. There was the sound of footsteps, laughter, and the turning of bicycle wheels on the cobbled paths. And right in the middle of this ordinary morning, something very extraordinary was about to happen. Something small, yet life-changing. Something that would bring two strangers together in the most unexpected way. James walked quickly across the campus, his backpack hanging loosely on one shoulder. He wasn't really in a rush. In fact, James always liked to arrive a little early. He often told himself, "The early bird catches the worm." Now, let's pause here for a moment. The phrase "the early bird catches the worm" is an English idiom. It means that people who arrive early, or start their work early, often have an advantage. They get the opportunities before others do. James repeated it often, almost like a little motto for his life. He believed that being prepared and being early opened doors to success. Meanwhile, not far away, Emily stood near the library steps. She was holding a notebook, glancing back and forth between a map and the buildings around her. Her expression was calm, but her eyes revealed just a touch of nervousness. It was her very first week at the university, and she was still trying to find her way around the campus. The large buildings all looked similar, and she wasn't quite sure which direction to take. She sighed softly, looked at her watch, then studied the map again. At that moment, James noticed her. He slowed his steps. Something about the way she stood there, a little unsure but still composed, caught his attention. With a kind smile, he walked over and said gently, "Excuse me, are you looking for something?" Emily looked up, a little surprised, but then smiled back. "Yes," she said. "I'm trying to find the economics lecture hall. But I think I'm lost." James laughed softly, not in a mocking way, but warmly, kindly. "Don't worry," he said. "You're not lost. You're just temporarily misplaced." Now here, James was using humor to make Emily feel more comfortable. This is what we call breaking the ice. To break the ice is an idiom that means to do or say something to make people feel more at ease when they meet for the first time. And in that very moment, the ice was broken. Emily laughed, the sound light and genuine. "Thank you," she said. "That actually makes me feel better." James pointed toward a tall building on the corner of the courtyard. "The economics lecture hall is over there. I'm going in the same direction. Shall I walk with you?" Emily nodded. "Yes, I'd like that." And just like that, two strangers began to walk side by side. As they walked, James noticed the calm way Emily carried herself. There was a quiet grace in her steps, and a curiosity in her eyes, as though she was eager to learn, eager to explore everything around her. To him, she was like a breath of fresh air. That phrase, "a breath of fresh air," is another idiom. It means something or someone new, refreshing, and positive. Emily, meanwhile, noticed how naturally James spoke. His voice was calm, his smile easy, and somehow he made her feel as if she already belonged here. In her mind, she thought, "We are getting along like a house on fire." Now, that's a very vivid idiom, to get along like a house on fire. It doesn't mean disaster. It actually means two people becoming friendly very quickly, as if they had known each other for years, even though they just met. By the time they reached the lecture hall, the bell had already rung. Together, they slipped quietly into two empty seats at the back of the room. The professor was already speaking about supply and demand. His voice filled the hall, words flowing quickly across graphs and charts. But for James and Emily, the real lesson that morning was not economics. It was something else. The beginning of a connection. James leaned slightly toward Emily and whispered, "So, first day nerves?" Emily nodded. "Yes, I'm a little nervous. But you've made it easier." James smiled warmly. "Don't worry. Every journey begins with a single step." Emily repeated his words softly, almost like a prayer. Every journey begins with a single step. The word stayed in her heart, gentle and reassuring. When the class ended, they both walked out together. Neither of them wanted to say goodbye too quickly. "So, do you usually come early to class?" Emily asked. "Yes," James replied. "I like to be early. You know what they say, the early bird catches the worm." Emily laughed again. "I think I need to become that bird too." There was laughter in their voices, but there was also something unspoken. A spark. Some people call it love at first sight. Now, love at first sight is a phrase used when someone falls in love the very first time they see another person. Neither James nor Emily admitted it out loud, but deep inside, they both felt something stir. As they reached the library gate, James gathered a little courage. "Would you like to have coffee after class someday?" he asked. Emily paused for a second, then smiled softly. "Yes, I'd like that." It was a small promise, but sometimes the smallest moments carry the greatest meaning. Because in life, it is often the little things that count. That evening, when Emily returned to her room, she thought about James. She remembered his words, his smile, his kindness. And she told herself, today was unexpected. But sometimes, life surprises you in the best ways. Meanwhile, James sat at his desk, trying to read his notes. But his thoughts wandered back to Emily. He shook his head and smiled quietly. "Looks like I've got butterflies in my stomach," he whispered. That idiom, butterflies in the stomach, means feeling nervous and excited at the same time, usually because of love. That night, both James and Emily went to bed with the same quiet thought. Maybe this is the beginning of something special. And so, their story began. Sometimes, love begins in the simplest places. A campus, a classroom, a short walk together. Love does not always arrive with thunder and lightning. Sometimes, it enters quietly, like a gentle breeze, a breath of fresh air. The next morning, the campus was alive again. Students filled the courtyards, bicycles rolled along the paths, and the sound of chatter drifted through the cool air. But for James and Emily, something felt different now. The world hadn't changed, yet it somehow seemed brighter, lighter, as though everything carried a quiet sense of possibility. Emily had promised herself she would spend more time in the library. Books were her safe place, her comfort. But that morning, as she walked up the stone steps of the old university library, she wondered quietly if she might see James again. She told herself not to expect too much, but her heart beat just a little faster. The library was a grand, old building with tall windows and long rows of wooden tables. The air smelled faintly of paper and ink, mixed with the scent of polished wood. Students sat in silence, bent over their books, while sunlight streamed in gently from above. Emily chose a table near the corner, pulled out her notebook, and began to read. But before long, a familiar voice broke the silence, soft and warm. "Is this seat taken?" Emily looked up, and there he was, James, smiling, holding a stack of books. Her heart lifted. "No," she whispered. "It's free." James sat down across from her, placing his books neatly on the table. "I didn't expect to see you here so soon," he said quietly. Emily smiled. "Neither did I. But I suppose great minds think alike." Now here, Emily had used another English phrase, "great minds think alike." It means that when two people have the same idea at the same time, it shows that both of them are smart or connected in thought. James chuckled softly. "Well, if that's true, then we must be geniuses." The two of them opened their books and began to read. For a while, they sat in silence, the only sound being the turning of pages. But silence, in this case, was not uncomfortable. It was peaceful. They were like two streams flowing side by side, not needing words, simply existing together. Emily thought, "This feels right. This feels natural." She remembered another phrase her grandmother once told her, "Silence is golden." That idiom means silence can be valuable, precious, and comforting. And sitting with James in that quiet library, Emily understood exactly what it meant. After nearly an hour, James closed his book with a sigh. "Too much reading makes my head spin," he said softly. Emily laughed. "Yes. Sometimes I feel like I'm chasing my own tail when I study for too long." That expression, "chasing your own tail," means doing a lot of effort but not making much progress, like a dog chasing its tail in circles. James smiled. "Exactly. Maybe we need a short break." They walked together toward the library garden, a small courtyard filled with flowers and benches. The air outside was cool, and the gentle rustling of leaves made the moment even more calming. Sitting on a bench, James looked at Emily thoughtfully. "So, tell me something about yourself," he asked. "Something not in the books." Emily hesitated for a moment, then said, "Well, I've always believed in the saying every cloud has a silver lining. Even when things are difficult, I try to find the good hidden inside." Now, that phrase "every cloud has a silver lining" means that even in bad situations, something positive can be found. James looked impressed. "That's a beautiful way to see the world." Then Emily asked, "And what about you? What do you believe in?" James leaned back, gazing up at the sky for a moment before answering. "I believe slow and steady wins the race." That idiom, "slow and steady wins the race," means consistent, patient effort leads to success, rather than rushing. Emily smiled. "I like that." And just like that, another thread of connection wove itself quietly between them. The days turned into weeks. Again and again, James and Emily found themselves in the library, sometimes by accident, sometimes by choice. They would read together, share little conversations, and exchange small smiles across the table. Sometimes they spoke about books. Sometimes about their families. Sometimes about nothing at all. And slowly, gently, something grew between them. It was not rushed. It was not forced. It was natural. Like spring flowers opening under the sunlight. One afternoon, while walking out of the library together, Emily said softly, "Do you ever feel like time flies when you're with someone?" James nodded. "Yes. Time flies when you're having fun." That idiom, "time flies," means time passes quickly when you are enjoying yourself. They both laughed, because it was true. Hours in the library felt like minutes when they were together. As the weeks passed, their bond deepened. They were no longer just strangers, They were friends. And though neither of them said it out loud, they both knew something more was quietly blooming beneath the surface. Emily often thought, this friendship is worth its weight in gold. That idiom means something is extremely precious, like gold. And James, on the other hand, often caught himself smiling when he wasn't supposed to. He thought, I'm walking on air these days. That idiom, walking on air, means feeling very happy, almost as if floating. And so, the library became their meeting place. Their secret world. A place where pages turned, words were whispered, and hearts slowly began to open. The story of James and Emily was still only beginning. But already, they were learning that sometimes, the best chapters in life are written quietly, in the silence between two people who simply enjoy being together. And so, in the quiet halls of the library, something gentle grew. Two souls, two hearts, slowly finding each other. In a world filled with noise, they discovered the beauty of silence and the magic of simple companionship. The library had become their shared space. But slowly, James and Emily began to step beyond those quiet walls. One rainy afternoon, after hours of reading together, James suggested softly, "Would you like to grab a cup of coffee?" Emily hesitated only a moment, then smiled. "Yes. I'd like that." The cafe was just across the street, warm and welcoming with the smell of roasted beans and freshly baked bread. Rain tapped gently against the windows as they stepped inside. The world outside was grey, but inside, it was golden with the glow of soft lamps. James held the door for Emily, and she whispered, "Thank you." He answered, "After you." Ladies first. That old phrase, ladies first, is a polite way of giving respect to women by letting them go ahead. They found a small table by the window. Emily wrapped her hands around her mug of hot coffee, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. James stirred his cup slowly, watching the swirls of cream mix into the dark liquid. For a moment, they were quiet. But it wasn't the heavy silence of strangers. It was the comfortable pause of two people who were beginning to feel at ease. Finally, Emily spoke. "You know, this feels like a breath of fresh air." That phrase, a breath of fresh air, means something new, refreshing, and welcome. James smiled. "I feel the same." They began talking, and soon words flowed easily. Emily told stories of her childhood in the countryside, about the old oak tree she used to climb, and the nights she spent reading under the stars. James listened with a soft smile. "You've really got a way with words," he said. "When you speak, it paints a picture." Emily blushed slightly. "You're just saying that." "No," James said gently. "I mean it. You make the past come alive." Then it was James's turn. He spoke about growing up in a busy city, the noise of buses, the endless lines of people, and how he had always dreamed of finding quiet corners, like the library, or even this cafe. Emily listened carefully, nodding. "I suppose opposites attract," she said with a little laugh. That idiom, opposites attract, means that people who are very different often feel drawn to each other. James chuckled. "Maybe that's true. You with your countryside stars, me with my city lights. Somehow we meet in the middle." The rain outside grew heavier, but inside, the cafe was warm and safe. Time seemed to slow. They laughed about small things, the professor who always forgot his glasses, the student who once brought his cat into class. They shared secrets, Emily admitting she was afraid of thunderstorms, James confessing he sometimes got stage fright when giving presentations. Each truth brought them closer. Each laugh tied another invisible thread between them. At one point, Emily leaned forward and whispered, You know what they say, a problem shared is a problem halved. That idiom means that when you talk about your worries with someone, it feels lighter, as though the burden is cut in half. James nodded. That's true. Talking to you makes me feel lighter, too. The hours passed unnoticed. The rain eventually stopped, and a soft evening glow filled the cafe. When they finally stood up to leave, James glanced at Emily and said, "I could talk with you until the cows come home." That playful phrase, "until the cows come home," means for a very long time, endlessly. Emily laughed. "Be careful, I might actually test that." As they walked back toward the campus, the wet pavement reflected the golden lights of the street lamps. Emily pulled her coat tighter, and without thinking, James offered his umbrella to cover them both. They walked close together, shoulders brushing. The world outside felt quiet, almost like it was holding its breath. Emily thought to herself, this is the beginning of something. And James, though he said nothing, felt the same. And so, with coffee cups and gentle words, James and Emily began to open their hearts. The rain had poured outside, but inside, they found warmth. In simple conversations, in laughter shared, in truths whispered over steaming cups, love was quietly planting its seeds. A few weeks had passed since that rainy afternoon in the cafe. James and Emily still met at the library, still shared quiet talks over coffee. But one evening, something new arrived on campus, the annual autumn festival. The festival was a tradition, a night filled with glowing lanterns, music, laughter, and food stalls lined across the green lawns. It was the kind of night where the world seemed to sparkle. Emily had been looking forward to it. She loved the colors, the dancing lights, the sound of violins in the air. James wasn't sure at first, he wasn't one for crowds, but when Emily asked, "Will you come with me?" he couldn't say no. So they walked together under the crisp evening sky, lanterns swinging from the trees, their golden light painting warm patterns on the ground. "Wow," Emily whispered, gazing at the decorations. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" James nodded. "Yes. It's like stepping into another world." Emily smiled. "They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but even words can't do this justice." That phrase, "a picture is worth 1,000 words," means that an image can sometimes express what words cannot. The two wandered through the festival. They tried roasted chestnuts, shared candy apples, and laughed when James nearly dropped his. Emily teased him, "You're all thumbs today." That idiom, all thumbs, means being clumsy with your hands. James grinned. "I suppose I am. Maybe you make me nervous." Emily blushed at that, but she didn't look away. Later, music began to play, soft violins mixed with the laughter of students. A circle of people gathered where couples were dancing under lantern light. James hesitated. Dancing wasn't his strength. But Emily's eyes sparkled as she said, "Come on. Just one dance." James smiled nervously. "I've got 2 left feet." That phrase, 2 left feet, means someone is not a good dancer, awkward in movement. Emily laughed, "Then let me lead." So, under the lanterns, with violins playing a gentle tune, they began to dance. At first, James stumbled. But Emily's laughter guided him, and soon he relaxed. They moved slowly, not perfectly, but in rhythm with each other. It wasn't about the steps. It was about the closeness, the soft glow of lanterns above, and the way the world seemed to disappear around them. After the dance, they sat on a bench beneath a tree hung with tiny fairy lights. The night was cool, but James hardly noticed, his heart was warm. Emily looked up at the glowing branches and said, "Nights like these are once in a blue moon." That phrase, once in a blue moon, means something that happens very rarely. James nodded. Yes. And I'm glad I get to share this rare night with you. They sat in silence for a while, watching people walk by, listening to laughter and music. Finally, James turned to Emily and said softly, I think meeting you was the best stroke of luck I've ever had. That phrase, a stroke of luck, means an unexpected piece of good fortune. Emily smiled, her eyes shining. You always know what to say, don't you? James shook his head. Not always. Only when I mean it. The festival wound down, lanterns flickering lower, music softening into the night. James and Emily walked back together, their steps slow, as if neither wanted the night to end. At the library steps, Emily paused. She looked at James, then whispered, Tonight was unforgettable. James replied gently, Yes. Tonight was written in the stars. That phrase, written in the stars, means destined to happen, fated. And so, beneath glowing lanterns and festival music, James and Emily found themselves closer than ever. With laughter, with gentle steps, with words spoken from the heart, they discovered that sometimes love does not arrive with thunder, but with lanterns in the night, quietly burning. The golden glow of the festival lingered in James's memory for days. Emily's laughter, the way the lanterns reflected in her eyes, the soft rhythm of their dance, it was etched in his heart. But life, as it often does, had other plans. 1 week later, dark clouds rolled into the city. Not just in the sky, but in their lives. Emily received news from home. Her father had fallen ill. She needed to travel back to her family for some time. When she told James, her voice trembled. I don't know how long I'll be gone. James felt his chest tighten. He wanted to be strong, but he whispered, out of sight, out of mind, is that what they say? That phrase, out of sight, out of mind, means when someone is not around, they might be forgotten. Emily looked at him sharply. Is that what you think of me? James shook his head quickly. No. Not for a second. I only fear it. Emily sighed and reached for his hand. James, you've become my anchor. That phrase, my anchor, means someone who gives stability and strength in difficult times. James held her hand tighter. And you're the light at the end of my tunnel. That phrase, the light at the end of the tunnel, means hope after difficulty. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy but tender. The day Emily left was overcast, the air heavy with rain. James walked her to the station. The platform was crowded, yet he felt they were alone in their own bubble. Emily tried to smile. Don't worry. Distance makes the heart grow fonder. That phrase, distance makes the heart grow fonder, means being apart can deepen love. James nodded, though his throat felt tight. Yes. An absence will never make me forget you. The train pulled in with a roar. Emily hugged him tightly, whispering, This isn't goodbye. It's just see you soon. And then, she was gone. The train carried her away, leaving James standing in the rain. Days turned into weeks. James returned to the library, but it felt empty without Emily. Her laughter, her curiosity, her warm presence, all gone. He sat at their favorite table, but the silence was deafening. One evening, he muttered to himself, I'm feeling under the weather. That phrase, under the weather, means feeling unwell or sad. But he pressed on. He studied, he walked the campus, he even went back to the cafe. Yet everything reminded him of her. Letters came, soft, handwritten notes from Emily. She told him about her father's recovery, about her hometown, about the flowers blooming in her mother's garden. Her words were like tiny beams of sunlight breaking through storm clouds. One note ended with, "Hold the fort for me until I'm back." That phrase, "hold the fort," means take care of things in someone's absence. James smiled at those words, clutching the letter to his chest. But as weeks stretched longer, doubts crept in. Would she really come back? Would the distance change things? His mind was a battlefield. One night, staring at the stars, he whispered, "Hope for the best, prepare for the worst." That phrase means to remain hopeful but be ready for challenges. Still, deep inside, his heart repeated one truth: Emily was worth every weight. And so, the storm within James grew and settled, like clouds passing over the moon. Love was there, steady, glowing, but shadows of doubt and distance tested its strength. Yet every letter, every memory, was a reminder that love, even when apart, holds its ground. The seasons turned. What once felt like an endless wait finally came to an end. James was sitting in the library one late afternoon, staring absent-mindedly at the same page for an hour, when he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Do you always look so lost in thought?" James froze. His heart skipped a beat. Slowly, he turned. There she was. Emily. Smiling, her eyes sparkling, a little tired but glowing all the same. James rose so quickly his chair scraped the floor. "Emily," his voice was barely a whisper. She laughed softly. "Cat got your tongue." That phrase, "cat got your tongue," means being unusually quiet, often from surprise. James blinked rapidly, still trying to believe what he was seeing. I didn't know you were back." Emily stepped closer, dropping her bag on the table. "I wanted to surprise you. And I suppose it worked." The two of them walked out into the crisp evening air. For James, it felt like spring had arrived early, even though the trees were still bare. As they strolled along the cobbled street, Emily sighed happily. "You know, there's no place like home." That phrase, "no place like home," means the comfort of being where you belong. James glanced at her, smiling faintly. "I hope you mean this city too." She nodded, her hair catching the light. "Yes. This city, and you." Later that night, they returned to the little cafe. The owner greeted Emily warmly, as though she had never left. Over tea, James finally found the courage to say what had been sitting in his chest for weeks. "Emily, while you were gone, I missed you more than words can say. But I kept reminding myself, absence makes the heart grow fonder." Emily reached across the table, touching his hand. "And I kept reminding myself that good things come to those who wait." That phrase, "good things come to those who wait," means patience is often rewarded. Their reunion wasn't without awkwardness. Distance had left little gaps in their rhythm, moments where they spoke over each other or hesitated. But soon, laughter filled the spaces. Emily teased, "Well, we're not exactly two peas in a pod anymore." That phrase, "two peas in a pod," means two people who are very similar or inseparable. James chuckled. "Maybe not. But opposites attract, don't they?" That phrase, "opposites attract," means differences can make people closer. They laughed together, realizing their bond hadn't weakened, it had grown stronger. Over the next weeks, James and Emily rediscovered each other. They walked through the park, visited bookshops, cooked simple meals together in the student kitchen. Emily often said, "Let's not cry over spilt milk." That phrase, "don't cry over spilt milk," means don't waste time worrying about past mistakes. James would reply, "Exactly. We live and learn." That phrase, "live and learn," means mistakes are part of growth. One evening, As the sun dipped below the skyline, James turned to Emily. "You know, when you left, I thought I might lose you. But now I realize, if something is meant to be, it will always find a way." Emily's eyes softened. She whispered, "And I realize that no matter where I go, my heart always points back to you." They stood in silence, the world around them fading. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that made it all the more beautiful. And so, James and Emily's love found its way back, just as rivers find the sea. Time apart tested their bond, but the reunion proved one truth: love, when true, endures all storms. It bends but does not break. It waits, it hopes, and at last, it returns. The weeks passed quickly. James and Emily settled back into a rhythm, but beneath the smiles and laughter, an unspoken question lingered: what comes next? One evening, they sat by the river bank, the city lights shimmering on the water. Emily leaned against James's shoulder. "James," she began softly, "I got an offer." James's heart skipped. "An offer?" She nodded. "To continue my research abroad, in Paris. It's the opportunity of a lifetime." James tried to smile, but it faltered. He whispered, "So soon after coming back?" Emily nodded again. "Yes. And it's not just for a month. It's 2 years." James fell silent. His thoughts spun in circles. Finally, he forced a laugh. "Well, talk about being caught between a rock and a hard place." That phrase, "caught between a rock and a hard place," means facing two difficult choices with no easy answer. Emily's eyes filled with conflict. "Exactly. I don't want to leave you behind, but I can't turn down this chance." Over the following days, the question weighed heavily on them. Their friends noticed James seemed distant. In the library, he often sat staring into space, lost in thought. One friend joked, "Cheer up, mate. You look like you've got the world on your shoulders." That phrase, "the world on your shoulders," means carrying heavy emotional burdens. James only gave a weak smile. One evening, James and Emily decided to face the problem head-on. They met again at the little cafe, the same place where their story had begun. Emily stirred her tea nervously. "James, we can't just sweep this under the rug." That phrase, "sweep something under the rug," means to ignore a problem instead of dealing with it. James nodded. "You're right. We have to talk about it, even if it hurts." Emily took a deep breath. "If I go, we'll be apart again. And long-distance relationships, they're not a walk in the park." That phrase, "not a walk in the park," means not easy or simple. James sighed. "True. But if we really want this, maybe we can make it work. After all, when there's a will, there's a way." That phrase, "when there's a will, there's a way," means determination can overcome obstacles. Emily reached across the table. "But it takes two to tango." That phrase, "it takes two to tango," means both people must put in effort to make something work. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the soft hum of the cafe. Finally, James said, "I don't want to stand in the way of your dreams. You should go." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "But what about us?" James took her hand. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it." That phrase, "cross that bridge when we come to it," means deal with problems as they arise, not before. For days, they wrestled with the decision. Emily drafted her acceptance letter but left it unsent. James buried himself in books, though his mind wandered endlessly. Finally, Emily whispered one evening as they walked, "Maybe love isn't about holding someone back, but letting them fly." James looked at her with quiet sadness. And maybe true love means waiting, even when the waiting feels unbearable. And so, James and Emily stood on the edge of another turning point. Love pulled them one way, ambition the other. Life often asks us to choose, but some choices feel like no choice at all. In the end, they realized one thing: no matter what tomorrow brought, their bond had already changed them forever. The decision was finally made. Emily accepted the offer in Paris. The day of departure arrived faster than either of them had expected. At Heathrow Airport, the atmosphere was bittersweet. Families bustled about, announcements echoed through the terminal, and James and Emily stood together, holding hands as though letting go would break their hearts. Emily whispered, "I can't believe it's déjà vu you leaving again." James smiled sadly. "Feels like history repeating itself." They walked slowly toward the check-in gate. Neither of them wanted to say goodbye. Emily broke the silence. "James, you've been my rock through everything." The phrase "my rock" means a strong source of support in difficult times. James squeezed her hand. "And you've been my guiding light." The phrase "guiding light" means someone who gives inspiration and direction. At the waiting area, James tried to lighten the mood. "Well, I guess we're back to square one." The phrase "back to square one" means returning to the beginning after a setback. Emily chuckled softly. "Except this time, the stakes are higher." James nodded. "True. But you know what they say, absence makes the heart grow fonder." That phrase means that distance often strengthens love and appreciation. Emily smiled through her tears. And out of sight doesn't mean out of mind. When the final boarding call came, Emily looked at James, her eyes glistening. "Promise me one thing." "Anything," James said. "Don't put your life on hold waiting for me." James shook his head firmly. "Emily, my heart is yours. I'll keep moving forward, but you'll always be part of my journey. You can bet your bottom dollar on that." The phrase "bet your bottom dollar" means being completely certain of something. Emily hugged him tightly. "James, I hate goodbyes." He whispered, "Then let's not say goodbye. Let's just say, until we meet again." The phrase "until we meet again" offers hope instead of finality. As Emily walked toward the gate, James watched her until she disappeared into the crowd. His chest ached, but he whispered to himself, "This isn't the end of the road. Just another bend in the journey." The phrase "not the end of the road" means that life or love still continues beyond hardships. And so, Emily boarded her flight to Paris, and James returned to London with an empty heart but a hopeful spirit. Love had once again tested them, and though oceans now lay between them, the bond they shared was stronger than distance. Sometimes, love asks us to let go, trusting that the threads of destiny will weave us together again. The days after Emily's departure were the hardest for James. The silence in his flat was deafening. The chair at the corner of the cafe, where she always sat, now looked painfully empty. Yet, James held on to a quiet strength, because even though she was miles away, she was still close at heart. The phrase "e close at heart" means someone remains deeply important, no matter the distance. Every Sunday morning, James sat at his desk and wrote a letter. He wrote about his walks through Hyde Park, about the blooming roses that reminded him of Emily's smile, and about his late-night thoughts when he missed her most. In Paris, Emily did the same. Her letters were full of the cobbled streets, the smell of freshly baked croissants, and the way the Seine sparkled at sunset. She often ended her notes with the phrase, "Home is where the heart is." That idiom means true comfort and belonging are found with the people you love, not just in a place. Sometimes the letters took weeks to arrive, but neither complained. For them, it was worth the wait. As Emily once wrote, "James, they say good things come to those who wait, and I believe that's us." The phrase means patience often brings the best rewards. Of course, not every day was easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when the phone connection crackled and cut out, leaving one of them in tears. But they always reminded each other, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. That phrase means strong people find a way forward, even in hard times. One winter night, James sat by the fireplace, reading one of Emily's letters for the 10th time. She had written, "Distance is just a test, James, to see how far love can travel." James smiled and whispered to himself, "She's right. Out of sight, but never out of mind." That phrase means even when someone isn't physically present, they are always remembered. Slowly, their love grew not just in presence but in patience. They began to dream together again, planning visits, imagining a shared future. Emily once wrote, "Every cloud has a silver lining, James. This distance has taught me to value our moments even more." James replied, "An absence makes the heart grow fonder. I can feel that truth in every heartbeat." And so, through ink and paper, through calls across time zones, James and Emily kept their love alive. The ocean between them became a bridge of words, carrying hope, laughter, and promises. They had learned that love is not bound by geography, but strengthened by faith. It had been nearly a year since Emily left for Paris. The letters, the phone calls, and the stolen video chats had kept them afloat, but nothing compared to the longing in their hearts. Finally, the day came. Emily's message was short but life-changing. "James, I'm coming home for Christmas." For James, it felt like a dream come true. That phrase means something long wished for has finally happened. He stood waiting at St. Pancras station, his heart racing. People bustled past with luggage and gifts, but James could hardly notice. Every second felt like an eternity. At last, through the crowd, he saw her, Emily, in a red coat, pulling her suitcase, her eyes searching. When their eyes met, time seemed to stand still. Emily dropped her bag and ran into his arms. James held her tightly, whispering, "You're the best Christmas present I could ever ask for." The phrase "Christmas present" here means something priceless, more precious than any material gift. They pulled back slightly, both laughing and crying at once. James said, "I've been counting the days. Now it feels like all my Christmases have come at once." This idiom means an overwhelming happiness when something wonderful happens. Emily smiled through her tears. "I was afraid we'd feel like strangers, but this feels like coming home." The phrase "coming home" symbolizes returning to love and comfort. They spent the evening walking through the lit-up streets of London, hand in hand. Everywhere, the city sparkled with decorations. Emily whispered, "This is like stepping into a winter wonderland." The phrase "winter wonderland" describes a magical, snowy, festive atmosphere. Over hot chocolate in a cozy cafe, James looked at her tenderly. "Emily, being apart was hard, but seeing you now, it was worth the wait. We've weathered the storm." The idiom "weathered the storm" means to survive difficulties and come out stronger. Emily nodded. "And now the sun is shining again." The phrase means better times have arrived after hardships. That night, as they stood on Westminster Bridge, watching the lights reflect on the Thames, James held her close. "Emily," he whispered, "I don't ever want to let you go again. With you, I feel like I'm on cloud 9. The idiom "on cloud 9" means feeling extremely happy. Emily kissed his cheek and whispered back, "Then let's promise, no matter where life takes us, we'll always find our way back to each other." And so, after months of distance, James and Emily's reunion reminded them of love's greatest truth: that true connection cannot be broken by time or space. When hearts are bound by love, every goodbye only leads to another hello. The reunion had lit a fire in James and Emily's hearts. After months apart, they realized more than ever that love was not just about moments, it was about building a life together. One evening, they sat in James's flat, sipping tea while snow fell outside. Emily leaned against him and whispered, "James, I don't want us to live like pieces of a puzzle scattered across the table. I want us to fit together, side by side." The phrase "pieces of a puzzle" means two people who complete each other. James smiled. "You're right. It's time we start planning our future. No more living worlds apart." He reached for her hand. "They say two heads are better than one, and with us, I think it's true." The idiom "two heads are better than one" means working together makes life easier and more successful. Over the next weeks, they dreamed aloud. Emily spoke about a cozy cottage with roses climbing the windows, a little garden where she could grow lavender, and evenings filled with laughter. James spoke about Sunday mornings filled with music, family dinners, and a dog who would always steal the biscuits. They were painting a picture of tomorrow. That phrase means imagining and planning a future with hope. One afternoon, while walking through Greenwich Park, James stopped under a great oak tree. He took Emily's hands and said softly, "Emily, you and I, we are cut from the same cloth." The idiom "cut from the same cloth" means two people share the same values and nature. Emily smiled, her eyes shining. "Yes, James. And that's why I know we can make this work." Sometimes their dreams felt huge, even overwhelming. Emily worried aloud, "What if life throws us curveballs? What if things don't go according to plan?" James squeezed her hand. "Then we'll take it one step at a time. Rome wasn't built in a day." The phrase means great things take time to build. One quiet evening, James whispered, "Emily, you are my better half." That phrase means the person who completes you, often used for a lifelong partner. Emily blushed. "And you're my rock, steady, strong, always there." The phrase "my rock" means someone dependable who provides support in difficult times. And so, James and Emily began weaving their dreams, thread by thread. They knew the road ahead would not always be smooth, but they believed that with love as their compass, they could weather any storm. Together, they were not just chasing dreams, they were building them. Life has a way of testing even the strongest hearts. For James and Emily, the first few months after their reunion felt like a bed of roses, easy, beautiful, and full of joy. But as time passed, reality knocked at their door. Emily was offered a permanent position in Paris, a career-defining role. James, on the other hand, was up for a promotion in London. Suddenly, their dreams collided with hard choices. The idiom "bed of roses" means a life that is comfortable and free of problems. One evening, tension filled James's flat. Emily sat on the sofa, twisting her scarf nervously. "James," she said softly, "this opportunity, it's a once-in-a-lifetime chance. But I don't want it to drive a wedge between us." The phrase "drive a wedge" means to create division or conflict in a relationship. James sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Emily, I want you to chase your dreams. But part of me fears that if you go, we'll be back to square one." The idiom "back to square one" means starting over from the beginning after a setback. Emily reached for his hand. "We've been through fire and rain together. Surely, we can survive this too." The phrase "through fire and rain" means enduring many difficulties and challenges. Weeks went by filled with difficult conversations. Some days, they laughed and reassured each other. Other days, arguments left them both in tears. James confessed one night, I feel like we're walking on eggshells." The idiom walking on eggshells means being very careful not to upset someone. Emily nodded. "I feel it too. But love isn't meant to be easy. They say every cloud has a silver lining. Maybe this struggle will show us how strong we truly are." The idiom means that even bad situations can have some good in them. There were nights James lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if love alone was enough. But then he would remember Emily's laughter, the way her eyes sparkled, the warmth of her touch, and he would whisper to himself, "She's worth every sleepless night." That phrase means someone is so important that no sacrifice feels too great. Emily too wrestled with her doubts. But each morning, when James brewed her tea just the way she liked, or when he wrapped his scarf around her shoulders in the cold, she knew love wasn't about perfection, it was about showing up, day after day. And so, James and Emily faced the trials of love, not as enemies, but as partners in the storm. They learned that true love is not the absence of conflict, but the decision to stand together, hand in hand, even when the winds howl. The storm of uncertainty had slowly begun to pass. Though challenges remained, James and Emily realized something profound: no matter where life took them, they always found their way back to each other. One crisp winter evening, James invited Emily for a walk along the River Thames. The city lights shimmered like diamonds on the water, and the air carried the faint sound of laughter from nearby cafes. Emily wrapped her coat tighter. "It's freezing tonight," she said with a smile. James slipped his arm around her shoulders. "Then let me be your warmth." They strolled quietly, each lost in thought. Finally, James stopped near Tower Bridge, where the glow of the lights turned the night into magic. He turned to Emily, his voice trembling slightly. "Emily," he began, "I've been turning this over in my mind for weeks. They say absence makes the heart grow fonder, and ours certainly has. But more than that, I've realized something. I don't just want to survive without you, I want to live with you, every day, come rain or shine." The idiom "come rain or shine" means no matter the circumstances. Emily's eyes softened. "James," she whispered. He took a deep breath, then dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his coat pocket. Her hands flew to her mouth, and tears instantly filled her eyes. "Emily," James said, his voice steady now, "you are the love of my life, my better half, the one who makes me feel like the luckiest man alive. Will you marry me?" The phrase "a love of my life" means the person you love most deeply and truly. For a moment, Emily was speechless, her heart pounding. Then she laughed through her tears. "Oh, James! I'd be over the moon to marry you." The idiom "over the moon" means extremely happy and joyful. James slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands shaking with joy. Emily threw her arms around him, whispering over and over, "Yes, yes, yes." As they embraced under the lights of the city, James murmured, "They say home is where the heart is, and my heart has always been with you." Emily smiled, pressing her forehead against his. "And now, it always will be." And so, under the watchful lights of London, two hearts promised forever. In that moment, the trials, the distance, the storms, all faded away. What remained was love, shining bright, strong enough to guide them through the rest of their days. The days leading up to the wedding felt like a whirlwind. Emily often joked, "We're running around like headless chickens." The idiom "like headless chickens" means being very busy but a little disorganized. Between choosing flowers, tasting cakes, and sending out invitations, both James and Emily were overwhelmed. But beneath the chaos, there was an unshakable excitement, the kind that made their hearts race. On the morning of the wedding, Emily stood in front of the mirror, her dress shimmering in the soft light. Her best friend, Charlotte, whispered, you look like $1 million. The idiom "like $1 million" means looking stunning and radiant. Emily blushed. I hope James thinks so too. Meanwhile, across town, James was pacing the floor, adjusting his tie for the 10th time. His best man, Oliver, teased him. Calm down, mate. You've already won her heart. Today's just the cherry on top. The phrase "the cherry on top" means an extra detail that makes something even better. The church bells rang out as guests filled the pews. The air was filled with laughter, whispers, and the soft rustle of dresses. James stood at the altar, his palms sweaty, his heart racing. Then, the doors opened. Emily appeared, radiant, her smile lighting up the room. James felt his knees go weak. She takes my breath away, he whispered. The phrase "takes my breath away" means to amaze or deeply move someone with beauty or emotion. The ceremony was filled with heartfelt vows. James said, "Emily, from the bottom of my heart, I promise to stand by you through thick and thin." The idiom "through thick and thin" means in both good and bad times. Emily replied, tears streaming down her cheeks, "James, you are my rock, my safe harbor, and my greatest adventure. I promise to love you until the cows come home." The phrase "until the cows come home" means for a very long time, forever. When the priest declared them husband and wife, the church erupted in cheers. James kissed Emily, and the bells rang louder than ever. Outside, petals rained from the sky, and the crowd shouted, "Happily ever after." James whispered in Emily's ear, "This is the best day of my life." Emily smiled, replying softly, "And the first day of forever." With vows exchanged and hearts bound together, James and Emily began their new chapter. The bells rang not just for a wedding, but for a promise that love, when true, will always find a way. The morning after the wedding, James and Emily woke up with smiles still painted across their faces. Emily stretched and whispered, "Pinch me, I must be dreaming." The phrase "pinch me, I must be dreaming" means something feels too good to be real. James chuckled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "This is as real as it gets, Mrs. Carter." They moved into a cozy flat in London. Though small, it was filled with laughter and warmth. Emily loved decorating, turning every corner into a reflection of their love. James joked, "We're starting with 4 walls and a roof, but with you, it already feels like home sweet home." The phrase "home sweet home" means a place of comfort and belonging. Married life, however, wasn't always smooth sailing. The idiom "smooth sailing" means without problems or difficulties. Emily liked things neat and tidy, while James had a habit of leaving socks on the floor. One evening, Emily sighed, "If you keep this up, James, we'll be at each other's throats." The idiom "at each other's throats" means arguing or fighting frequently. James laughed, pulling her close. "Then I'll just keep making you tea to keep the peace." As weeks turned into months, they learned the rhythm of married life. They celebrated small victories, like cooking a meal without burning it, or budgeting successfully. James often said, "We're learning to weather the storm together." The idiom "weather the storm" means to endure difficulties with strength and patience. Emily nodded, replying, "Yes, and we're building something from the ground up." The phrase "from the ground up" means starting from the beginning and building steadily. One evening, as they sat on the sofa sipping hot chocolate, Emily leaned her head on James's shoulder. "Life isn't a bed of roses, but with you, it feels close enough." The idiom "a bed of roses" means a life that is easy and free from difficulties. James kissed the top of her head. "And together, we'll make sure it's always worth the ride." Marriage was not about perfection but about patience, laughter, and compromise. James and Emily were no longer two souls walking separate paths, but one heart beating in harmony, ready to face tomorrow hand in hand. Months passed, and James and Emily settled into their married routine. But life, as it often does, began to throw curveballs. The phrase "throw curveballs" means to present unexpected challenges. James had been working late nights at his firm, trying to climb the corporate ladder. The idiom "climb the corporate ladder" means to advance in one's career step by step. Emily supported him, but sometimes she felt lonely. One evening, she said softly, "James, I know you're burning the candle at both ends, but I miss us." The idiom "burning the candle at both ends" means working too hard, day and night, without rest. James sighed, guilt flashing across his face. "You're right, love. I've been so caught up, I forgot what really matters." Meanwhile, Emily was facing her own hurdles. Her parents had been urging her to move back to the countryside, worried that city life was too much of a rat race. The idiom "rat race" means a stressful, competitive lifestyle. Emily felt torn between pleasing her parents and following her heart with James. Together, they decided to take things one step at a time. The phrase "one step at a time" means to approach a challenge gradually and patiently. James promised to leave the office earlier at least 3 nights a week. Emily, in turn, assured him, "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it," about her parents' concerns. The idiom "cross that bridge when we come to it" means to deal with a problem only when it happens. But just when life seemed manageable, another storm arrived. James's company announced layoffs. His job hung by a thread. The idiom "hung by a thread" means in great danger of failing or ending soon. Emily held his hands tightly and said, "No matter what, we're in this together. When the going gets tough, the tough get going." The idiom "when the going gets tough, the tough get going" means strong people push forward even in difficult times. James smiled weakly. "You always know how to keep me afloat." That night, they sat by the window, watching the rain fall. Emily whispered, "Every cloud has a silver lining." The idiom "every cloud has a silver lining" means there's something good in every bad situation. James nodded, hope flickering in his eyes. "Yes, and maybe this is our chance to chase new dreams." Life tested them with trials, but James and Emily understood that love was not about avoiding storms, it was about learning to dance in the rain. James sat at the kitchen table with a heavy heart. The news had finally arrived, his position at the firm had been made redundant. Emily found him staring blankly at his coffee. She touched his shoulder gently. "Cheer up, love. When one door closes, another opens." The idiom "when one door closes, another opens" means that the end of one opportunity often leads to a new one. At first, James felt like he was back to square one. The phrase "back to square one" means to start over after a failure. But Emily reminded him, sometimes life pushes us out of our comfort zone so we can find where we truly belong. The phrase "comfort zone" means a safe, familiar situation without challenges. Encouraged by Emily, James began exploring opportunities he had once brushed aside. He had always dreamed of starting his own small consultancy, helping local businesses. Emily smiled, "You've always had the gift of the gab and a way with people. Why not use that to build something of your own?" The idiom "gift of the gab" means the ability to speak easily and persuasively. James hesitated. But starting from scratch is a huge risk. The idiom "starting from scratch" means beginning with nothing. Emily squeezed his hand. Fortune favors the bold. The saying "fortune favors the bold" means people who take risks often succeed. Meanwhile, Emily decided to follow her own passion, writing. She began jotting down articles about city life and love, sending them to local magazines. To her surprise, a popular lifestyle column accepted her work. James grinned proudly. "Look at you, making a name for yourself." The phrase, making a name for yourself, means becoming well-known or respected. Together, they realized life wasn't about climbing the same ladder as everyone else, it was about carving their own path. The phrase carving your own path means creating a unique way in life or career. One evening, Emily said, "It feels like we've turned over a new leaf." The idiom turn over a new leaf means to begin again in a better way. James smiled, pulling her close. "And this time, we're writing our own story, chapter by chapter." Though the winds of change had unsettled them, James and Emily discovered that horizons expand only when you dare to step beyond the familiar. Together, they were not afraid to dream anew. One Sunday afternoon, James and Emily drove to Emily's family home in the countryside. The little stone house with roses climbing up the walls always felt warm and nostalgic, but today there was a cloud hanging in the air. Emily's father looked serious as they sat down for tea. "Emily," he said firmly, "this city life is not what we wanted for you. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there." The idiom dog-eat-dog world means a ruthless and competitive environment. Emily took a deep breath. "Dad, I know you worry, but James and I are building our life together. We're not just keeping our heads above water, we're learning to swim." The idiom keeping our heads above water means surviving in a difficult situation without sinking. James, ever polite, added, "Sir, I lost my job recently, but we're turning it into an opportunity. We're starting fresh, and Emily's writing is already opening new doors." Her father frowned. "That sounds like a shot in the dark." The idiom "a shot in the dark" means trying something with little chance of success. Emily's mother, however, smiled gently. Sometimes a leap of faith is exactly what young love needs. The phrase "a leap of faith" means trusting in something uncertain. But tensions rose when her father said, "Emily, you're letting your heart rule your head." The idiom "letting your heart rule your head" means making decisions based on emotions rather than logic. Emily stood her ground. "No, Dad. For once, my heart and my head agree. James and I are partners through thick and thin." The phrase "through thick and thin" means in good times and bad times. After a long silence, James spoke up. "Sir, I love your daughter. I will move heaven and earth to keep her safe and happy." The idiom "move heaven and earth" means to do everything possible. Her father studied him for a while, then softened. "Perhaps I judge too quickly. Actions speak louder than words." The saying "actions speak louder than words" means what someone does is more important than what they say. That evening, as James and Emily drove back, Emily squeezed his hand. "I think Dad just needs time. We'll win him over, slowly but surely." The phrase "slowly but surely" means making steady, certain progress even if it takes time. James smiled. "One day, he'll see we're two peas in a pod." The idiom "two peas in a pod" means two people who are very similar and close. In the realm of love, family approval is often the toughest mountain to climb. But James and Emily knew that patience and unity could turn walls into bridges. Autumn rolled into winter, and with it came storms, both in the skies and in life. James's new consultancy faced a rocky start. A key client pulled out at the last minute, leaving him high and dry. The idiom "high and dry" means abandoned without help or resources. Meanwhile, Emily's column was gaining readers, but critics sometimes left harsh comments. She felt like she was walking on thin ice. The idiom "walking on thin ice" means being in a risky or delicate situation. One rainy evening, as the wind howled outside, Emily found James staring at unpaid bills. He rubbed his temples. We're barely making ends meet. The idiom making ends meet means just managing to cover expenses. Emily sat beside him. We'll ride out the storm together. The idiom ride out the storm means to survive a difficult time until it passes. But the pressure sometimes spilled over. One night, after a small argument, James blurted out, "Maybe I bit off more than I can chew." The idiom bit off more than I can chew means taking on more responsibility than one can manage. Emily, though hurt, replied softly, "Every couple has their ups and downs. We can't throw in the towel now." The idiom throw in the towels means to give up. The next morning, James apologized. "I was at the end of my rope last night." "You don't deserve that." The idiom at the end of my rope means feeling completely out of patience or energy. Emily hugged him. "I know. But remember, we're in the same boat. If we sink together. But if we sail together." The phrase "in the same boat" means sharing the same difficult situation. Weeks later, just when things seemed darkest, James received a call. A local business wanted to hire him long-term. At the same time, Emily's column was shortlisted for a small award. James laughed with relief. Talk about a silver lining. The idiom silver lining means a positive aspect in a bad situation. Emily added with a grin, "See? Every cloud has a silver lining." The phrase "every cloud has a silver lining" means that even bad things can bring good outcomes. Storms test the strength of roots. And in weathering the winds of hardship, James and Emily discovered that their love was not a fragile flame, but a steady fire. The night was quiet, except for the gentle rustle of leaves outside James's flat. He and Emily sat by the window, cups of tea in hand, neither speaking for a while. Both knew they had reached a point where their choices would shape the rest of their lives. Emily finally broke the silence. "James, we can't keep sitting on the fence. We have to decide what we truly want." James sighed, looking at her with tired yet affectionate eyes. "You're right. We can't just sweep things under the rug anymore. It's time to face the music." Emily nodded, her heart heavy. She thought of her career, her family's expectations, and the love she had for James. It felt like being caught between a rock and a hard place. James reached for her hand. "We've been through thick and thin, Emily. But now the ball is in our court. Do we build a future together, or do we go our separate ways?" Tears welled in her eyes. "James, you know my heart beats for you. But love isn't always enough. We must be practical too." James whispered, "True. But without you, I'd feel like a fish out of water. I can't imagine life without you." The room fell silent again. The clock ticked slowly, echoing their hesitation. Finally, Emily said softly, "Maybe the answer is to take the bull by the horns. Let's not live with regrets. If we stumble together." James smiled faintly, relief washing over him. Then it settled. "We'll weather the storm, hand in hand." They clinked their teacups gently, a simple gesture that felt like sealing a pact. Though the road ahead was uncertain, they chose to walk it side by side, come rain or shine. That night, neither of them slept much. But their hearts were lighter, for the first step had been taken. The morning after their heartfelt talk, James and Emily strolled through the quiet streets of Cambridge. The world seemed unchanged, yet their hearts carried the weight of the decision they had made. James glanced at Emily and said softly, "We've burned our bridges, haven't we? There's no turning back now." Emily smiled faintly. maybe that's what we needed. Sometimes you have to jump in at the deep end. The day unfolded slowly, like a book opening page by page. They visited their favorite cafe, where the barista knew their orders by heart. Everything felt familiar, yet slightly different, as if life had shifted gears. James thought of his parents, of the comfortable path he was leaving behind. "Emily," he admitted, "I know we're taking a gamble. But fortune favors the brave, doesn't it?" She squeezed his hand gently. "Yes, and sometimes you have to risk it all to win the jackpot." They laughed, but behind the laughter was nervousness. Life had placed them on a high wire, and every step mattered. Still, with each shared glance, each comforting smile, they reminded themselves, together, they could cross any bridge. That evening, as they watched the sunset paint the sky orange and pink, Emily whispered, "No matter what tomorrow brings, we've taken a leap of faith. That counts for something." James kissed her forehead. "It counts for everything." Days turned into weeks. James and Emily embraced their new path, but reality was never far behind. Bills piled up, work pressures mounted, and doubts occasionally crept in. One rainy afternoon, Emily stared out of the window, lost in thought. James noticed and asked gently, "Penny for your thoughts?" She sighed. "Sometimes I wonder if we've bitten off more than we can chew." James nodded, acknowledging her worries. "True, but every cloud has a silver lining. We just have to look for it." The storm outside mirrored their struggles within. Yet, as the rain drummed softly against the glass, Emily felt James's arm around her shoulders. "Remember," he said, "Rome wasn't built in a day. We'll get there, step by step." Her lips curved into a small smile. "You always know how to calm the storm. Maybe that's why I feel at home in your arms." They sat in silence, watching the rain ease into a drizzle. Emily whispered, "It's true what they say, when the going gets tough, the tough get going." James chuckled softly. "And as long as we keep moving forward, hand in hand, no storm can wash us away." The rain finally stopped, leaving the world fresh and renewed. And with it, their hearts carried a new resolve, to find the silver linings, no matter how dark the clouds. The morning air was crisp, carrying with it the scent of new beginnings. James and Emily walked along the River Cam, their reflections shimmering on the water. Life was not perfect, but love gave them courage to carry on. James turned to Emily, his voice thoughtful. "We've had our ups and downs, haven't we?" Emily smiled gently. "Yes, but every relationship is a two-way street. We give, we take, and we grow." As they passed a group of rowers practicing on the river, Emily whispered, "Sometimes I feel we're in the same boat as them, paddling hard, trying to stay in rhythm." James chuckled softly. "True, and if we keep rowing together, we'll stay afloat." They reached a small bridge, pausing to watch the water flow beneath. James's voice grew quiet. "I know I've made mistakes along the way. But I want to build bridges, not walls." Emily touched his arm tenderly. "And I want the same. After all, it takes two to tango." The bells of a nearby church rang, echoing through the calm morning. Their hearts felt lighter, bound by the promise that whatever came their way, they would build bridges, together. The autumn leaves painted Cambridge in shades of amber and gold. James and Emily walked hand in hand through Parker's Piece, the world around them both beautiful and uncertain. James finally spoke, his voice steady but tender. "Emily, life rarely gives us a perfect roadmap. Sometimes we just have to take a leap of faith." Emily sighed, gazing at the leaves drifting to the ground. But what if we fall flat on our faces? James smiled gently. Then we'll pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and try again. Because at the end of the day, love is worth the risk. Emily's heart swelled at his words. She whispered, "You're right. We can't sit on the fence forever. Sooner or later, we have to bite the bullet and decide." James nodded. "If we stick together through thick and thin, nothing can break us apart." They stopped near the park bench where they had first sat together months ago. Emily leaned her head on James's shoulder. "Let's choose love, even if it means facing storms along the way." The city lights flickered to life around them, a gentle reminder that every new chapter begins with courage. But life has a way of testing even the strongest of hearts. A few weeks later, Emily received a letter confirming her Oxford appointment. The excitement was there, but so was the shadow of separation. That evening, the sky darkened with heavy clouds as James and Emily walked along King's Parade. The weather seemed to mirror their mood. Emily whispered, "We've been on cloud 9 for so long, but now I feel like we're walking on thin ice." James squeezed her hand. "True, but even when it rains, every cloud has a silver lining." Emily's eyes watered. "I'm scared we'll lose our spark, James." He looked into her eyes, his voice firm yet tender. "When the going gets tough, the tough get going. We'll weather the storm, Emily. I promise." The first drops of rain began to fall. Instead of running for shelter, they stood in the rain, holding each other as though their love itself was the umbrella shielding them. Emily whispered against his chest, "Together, come rain or shine." And James replied, "Together, always." The day finally arrived. Emily boarded the train to Oxford, a suitcase by her side and her heart heavy. James stood on the platform, waving until she disappeared from sight. As the train pulled away, Emily felt a lump in her throat. Out of sight, out of mind, she whispered to herself. But deep down, she knew that wasn't true. Later that evening, James sat in his room, staring at the phone. He muttered, "Absence makes the heart grow fonder, but it also makes the days feel like years." Emily called that night. Her voice trembled but carried warmth. "James, no matter the miles, you're always close to my heart. We're in the same boat, aren't we? Both learning how to hold on." James smiled softly. "Yes. And we'll bridge the gap, step by step. It's not goodbye, it's just see you later." They ended the call, their hearts aching but hope. Weeks passed. Instead of letting the distance pull them apart, James and Emily began writing long letters. Emily wrote by candlelight, "James, without you, the days are dull as dishwater. But your words light up my life. You're my guiding star." James replied, "Emily, I'm counting the days until we're together again. You're the apple of my eye, the one who keeps me going when life feels heavy." One weekend, James surprised Emily by visiting Oxford. When she saw him, she ran into his arms, laughing and crying at once. Emily whispered, "This feels like a dream come true. I guess good things come to those who wait." James kissed her forehead. "And patience is a virtue, my love. No distance can dim what we have." That night, they walked along Oxford's quiet cobbled streets, hand in hand, feeling as though the world had stopped just for them. As months went by, the weight of distance began to show. Emily had exams piling up, while James worked long hours at the local firm. Calls became shorter, messages fewer. One evening, Emily sighed into the phone. "James, it feels like we're ships passing in the night." James rubbed his forehead. I know. I don't want us to drift apart, but life's throwing everything but the kitchen sink at me right now. Emily's voice wavered. Sometimes I wonder if we're holding on by a thread. There was a long silence. Finally, James whispered, "Love isn't always smooth sailing, Emily. But I don't want to lose you. We just need to weather the storm." Though neither hung up in anger, the silence that followed was heavy, like a cloud that refused to lift. Days later, James decided to surprise Emily with a handwritten note slipped into her mailbox. It read, "Emily, love is not measured in perfect days, but in the strength we find during hard ones. You're the wind beneath my wings, and I'll never let us fall apart." Emily read the letter with tears streaming down her cheeks. That evening, she called him. "James, you always know how to mend a broken heart. I was ready to throw in the towel, but your words reminded me why we started this journey." James smiled, his voice steady. "Darling, every relationship has bumps in the road. But we've come too far to let go now. Together, we'll turn the page." Emily whispered, "Then let's write the next chapter side by side." Their love, though battered, had found a new flame, proof that even in darkness, there's always a ray of hope. The riverside cafe was quiet, touched by autumn's soft golden leaves. James and Emily sat at their usual table, the sound of the river soothing their restless minds. Emily broke the silence. Her voice was gentle, yet firm. "James, we can't go round in circles anymore. We need a plan for our future." James sighed, looking out at the rippling water. "You're right, Emily. Enough beating around the bush. We can't just drift like this. It's time to face the music and figure things out." After hours of heartfelt talk, they decided Emily would finish her degree, while James worked and saved. It was not easy. James admitted, "It won't be a bed of roses, but one day, our efforts will pay off." Emily took his hand, her eyes glowing with quiet strength. "As long as we're in this together, James, I'm willing to go the extra mile." The river seemed to nod in agreement, carrying their promise downstream. Life grew demanding. Emily studied late into the night, her books spread across the desk, while James worked long shifts, often exhausted. Sometimes their only contact was a brief phone call. One evening, Emily laughed softly. "We're burning the candle at both ends, aren't we?" James, weary yet smiling, replied, "Yes. But when push comes to shove, this hard work is just the price we pay for tomorrow's happiness." Even in fatigue, their love gave them fuel. They whispered promises before sleep, always reminding each other, "Love keeps us going." Months passed before they could meet again. James arranged a surprise, waiting at the train station with a bouquet of wildflowers. When Emily saw him, she dropped her suitcase and ran straight into his arms. Her eyes sparkled as she whispered through joyful tears, "Absence makes the heart grow fonder." James held her close, breathing in the moment. "Seeing you now," he said, "I know you're worth your weight in gold." The world around them blurred. Only their reunion was real. Not everyone believed in their love. Friends questioned Emily. "Do you really think long distance can last?" Emily listened quietly but answered calmly, "Love isn't about keeping up appearances. It's about keeping the flame alive, no matter the distance." Though doubts lingered in whispers, Emily's faith remained unshaken. James's voice in her heart gave her strength. Then came unexpected news. James was offered a job abroad. The opportunity was exciting, but it meant distance once more. Emily asked, her brows furrowed, "Are we jumping out of the frying pan into the fire?" James took her hand. Maybe, but fortune favors the brave. If we want a brighter future, sometimes we must take the leap. After days of reflection, they decided together James would go. One late night, their call lasted for hours. James's voice trembled with emotion. "Emily, through thick and thin, I'll never let go." Emily paused, her heart swelling. "Promises are easier said than done, James. But I believe in us." The line fell silent for a moment, carrying their trust across the ocean. A storm struck James's city, cutting power and delaying flights. Days passed with missed calls. Emily wept, whispering, "It feels like we're hanging by a thread again." Finally, James's voice returned over the crackling line. "Don't lose heart, Emily. Every cloud has a silver lining. This too shall pass. We'll come out stronger." Relief washed over her. Their love had been tested yet again, and survived. At last, Christmas brought James home. Snow fell gently as he stepped through Emily's doorway, carrying the warmth of all his promises. They sat by the fire, wrapped in a blanket, the world outside frozen in silence. Emily smiled. "There's no place like home. Especially with you." James laughed softly, eyes shining. "After all these storms, I feel like the cat that got the cream." They leaned into each other, safe at last. The snow outside sparkled under the moonlight. James and Emily sat side by side, watching the fire crackle. Emily's voice was calm. "We've crossed so many bridges, James. But somehow, I know the journey is only beginning." James kissed her hand gently. "Yes, Emily. The best is yet to come." And in that moment, their hearts beat in harmony, two souls ready to face the future together, whatever it might hold. The morning sun painted the horizon in shades of pink and gold. James and Emily walked through the quiet countryside, their footsteps crunching on frosted grass. Emily whispered, "After all the storms, today feels like a new dawn." James smiled, holding her hand tighter. "We've been through the ringer, Emily. But now the sky feels clear again." They watched the sunrise in silence, both realizing that life had handed them a second chance. Back in their little town, James found steady work, while Emily began teaching part-time at a local school. Their days were simple, yet filled with hope. At night, they often sat with a notebook, sketching their dreams. A small house, a garden, maybe even children one day. James said softly, "Rome wasn't built in a day, Emily. But brick by brick, we'll build our life together." Emily rested her head on his shoulder, whispering, "Every great journey begins with small steps. And I'm glad I'm walking them with you." One afternoon, Emily found an old box of letters from the early days of their love. Her eyes misted as she read his words written years ago. When James came home, she handed him one. "Do you remember this, James? You promised you'd move mountains for me." James chuckled. "I still would. Past is past, but it's also the route that keeps us grounded." Together, they placed the letters back in the box, not as reminders of pain, but as proof of how far they had come. Life, however, is never without trials. A financial setback shook them. Bills piled up, and doubts crept in. One night, Emily sighed, "It feels like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back." James sat beside her, steady as always. "Yes, but every cloud has a silver lining. Hard times don't last forever. We'll weather this storm." And though uncertainty loomed, their hearts held firm. Winter turned into spring, and with it came blossoms of hope. On a quiet evening, under the stars, James finally gathered courage. He knelt before Emily, his hands trembling slightly, a small ring hidden in his palm. "Emily," he whispered, "we've crossed bridges, fought storms, and built dreams. Will you walk the rest of life's road with me, as my wife?" Tears welled in Emily's eyes. She bent down, holding his face in her hands. "James, from day one, you've been my home." "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The stars above bore witness to a promise sealed forever. News of their engagement spread like wildfire in the little town. Family and friends gathered, offering love and support. Emily laughed as she flipped through fabric swatches. "It's all happening so fast, James. Sometimes I feel like I'm walking on air." James teased, "Careful, Emily. Don't bite off more than you can chew. We'll keep it simple, just like us." And so, they planned a small, heartfelt ceremony, focusing not on grandeur, but on love. Emily's father, who had once doubted James, called him aside one evening. With steady eyes, he said, "James, you've proved yourself through thick and thin. You've stood by my daughter when it wasn't easy. I give you my blessing." James's voice faltered. "Thank you, sir. I promise I'll never let her down." For the first time, there was no barrier, only respect and love. The church bells rang as sunlight streamed through stained glass. Emily walked down the aisle, her dress shimmering like morning dew. James stood waiting, his eyes locked on hers, as though no one else existed. When they exchanged vows, Emily's voice trembled. "James, you are my anchor, my light, my everything. From this day forward, come rain or shine, I am yours." James answered with equal devotion, "Emily, you are the love of my life. Till death do us part, I will cherish you." The congregation wept tears of joy as their lips met, sealing their vow. James and Emily sat on the porch one evening, the summer breeze brushing against their faces. Fireflies blinked softly across the garden. Emily placed a hand on her stomach and whispered, "James, what if we're about to start a new chapter, a little one joining us soon?" James's heart skipped a beat. His eyes widened, then softened with joy. "Emily, if that's true, then tomorrow just became brighter than I ever dreamed." Months later, Emily held a tiny bundle in her arms. Their baby's cry echoed through the room like music. James stood beside her, his hands trembling as he touched the baby's soft cheek. "Our little miracle," he whispered. "Emily, this child is proof that love grows and multiplies." Emily smiled through tears. "Life has come full circle, James. We've sown love, and now it has blossomed." Parenthood was beautiful, but not without its challenges. Sleepless nights became the new normal. James would pace the floor, rocking the baby in his arms. Emily chuckled softly, despite her exhaustion. Who would have thought you, James, the strong and steady man, would be defeated by a 7-pound baby? James grinned tiredly. "I may be running on empty, Emily, but one smile from this little one, and I'm over the moon again." As the baby grew, so did the lessons. Spilled milk, endless questions, first steps, and little tumbles. One evening, Emily sighed, "Parenting really tests your patience. It's not a walk in the park." James wrapped his arm around her. "True. But every setback is just a stepping stone. We'll take it one day at a time, Emily." They laughed, realizing that love and patience were the true cornerstones of family life. Years passed. Their child, bright-eyed and curious, stood in the garden, showing James a drawing. "Papa, look! It's us, our house, and Mommy." James's eyes grew misty. "Emily, I feel like the richest man alive. We may not have gold or silver, but we have love, and that's priceless." Emily whispered, "You've built not just a home, James, but a legacy of love." Life wasn't about riches or luxury. It was about quiet mornings with tea, laughter at the dinner table, and bedtime stories whispered in candlelight. Emily often said, "Happiness is not in the big things, but in the little moments that take your breath away." James nodded, "Yes, Emily. At the end of the day, it's the simple joys that keep our hearts alive." One year, James lost his job, and the family faced another financial storm. For a moment, fear knocked at their door. Emily reassured him, "We've been through rough waters before, James. This too shall pass." He held her hand tightly. "As long as I have you and our child, Emily, I know we'll make it to safe shores again." And together, they faced the storm, side by side, stronger than before. The day came when their child stood on a small stage at school, reciting a poem. Emily and James sat in the crowd, their hearts swelling with pride. Afterward, Emily whispered, "James, I see so much of you in our child, the strength, the courage." James smiled, his eyes shining. "And the kindness, Emily, that comes from you." As years passed, James and Emily found themselves watching more sunsets together. Their child grew, their love deepened, and life slowed into a gentle rhythm. Emily leaned against him. "We've climbed mountains, crossed valleys, and now we're walking in peace." James kissed her hair. "Love is not about how fast we run or how high we climb, Emily. It's about walking together, hand in hand, through every season." On their porch once again, fireflies dancing, the air filled with quiet serenity. Their child played nearby, laughter ringing like music. Emily whispered, "James, our story has been full of twists and turns, but one thing has never changed, your love." James took her hand, pressing it to his heart. "Emily, love is not measured in years but in moments. And every moment with you feels like forever." The stars above twinkled as if in agreement, sealing their promise of a love that would last beyond time itself. The morning sun painted the sky in soft gold. James and Emily stood at the school gates, holding their child's tiny hand. Emily bent down, whispering, "Be brave, sweetheart. Every big journey begins with a small step." Their child nodded nervously, then walked inside. James squeezed Emily's hand. "They've left the nest for the first time. Feels like a piece of my heart just walked away." Years passed quickly. Their child returned home one day, upset about friends and school. "It feels like no one understands me," the child cried. Emily sat beside them. "Growing up isn't a bed of roses. But remember, storms don't last forever. You'll find true friends who see your heart." James added softly, "And no matter what, we'll always be in your corner." The teenage years arrived like thunderclouds. Arguments flared, doors slammed, and silence stretched between rooms. One evening, Emily sighed, "James, parenting a teenager is like walking on eggshells." James chuckled. "True. But let's not forget, every storm runs out of rain. Our love and patience will see us through." And slowly, the storm softened into calm again. One late night, James found his child awake, staring out of the window. "Papa," they asked quietly, "what's the secret to life?" James smiled, sitting beside them. The secret? Life isn't about chasing shadows. It's about finding light, even in dark places. And it's about giving more love than you take. His words lingered like lanterns in the night. Emily taught by example. She showed their child kindness in the market, patience with neighbors, and compassion for strangers. One day, their child said, "Mama, people always smile when they see you." Emily smiled back. That's because kindness is contagious. Remember, love is the one treasure you can give away and still have more. Their child grew older and came home one evening, shy and quiet. Emily sensed it. "Ah, James," she whispered, "our little one has been struck by Cupid's arrow." James chuckled. First love, it's sweet as honey, but it can sting like a bee too. Emily hugged their child gently. Remember, love should lift you, not break you. If it's true, it will last. If not, it will teach you. Not long after, their child came home in tears. The first heartbreak had arrived. James sat them down. "I know it feels like the end of the world, but trust me, it's just a bend in the road, not the end of the road." Emily kissed their forehead. Hearts heal slowly, but when they do, they grow stronger. Their words became a healing balm, reminding their child that love, though painful at times, was always worth it. As years passed, their child began asking, "What's my purpose in life?" Emily smiled. Purpose isn't found overnight, it's built day by day, choice by choice. James added, "Find what makes your heart sing. If you follow passion, success will follow like a shadow." Their child nodded, hope flickering like a candle in their eyes. The family built traditions, Sunday dinners, evening walks, and holiday storytelling by the fireplace. Emily often said, "Traditions are the threads that stitch our hearts together." James added, "Someday, our child will pass these on, and our love will echo through generations." One evening, the family sat watching the stars. Their child, now grown, asked, "Mama, Papa, what's the greatest thing you've ever given me?" Emily answered softly, "Unconditional love." James smiled. "And the belief that no matter what happens, family is your anchor in the storm." The child whispered, "Then I will carry this legacy forward." And under the endless sky, the promise of love stretched from one generation to the next. The hall was filled with applause as their child walked across the stage, diploma in hand. Emily's eyes glistened with tears. "James, do you remember the day we held them on their first day of school?" James chuckled softly. "Feels like yesterday. And now, look at them. Ready to fly." Emily whispered, "A parent's greatest joy is watching their child's dreams take wings." One evening, their child sat at the dinner table. "Mama, Papa, I found someone special." Emily's eyes sparkled. "Ah, love has knocked again, but this time, it's different." James smiled warmly. When two souls meet with honesty, they can weather any storm. Remember, true love is less about fireworks, more about steady warmth. Their child brought their partner home. Nervous laughter filled the living room as tea was served. Emily whispered to James, "They look at each other the way we used to, like the whole world is in their eyes." James smiled, squeezing her hand. Love has found its way again. The circle of life continues. Weeks later, their child announced, "I asked them to marry me, and they said yes." Emily clasped her hands in joy. "Oh, my heart could burst." James grinned. Marriage is like a garden, it needs care, patience, and constant watering. But when tended with love, it blossoms beautifully. The day of the wedding arrived. Soft music filled the air as vows were exchanged. Emily whispered, "Seeing them today reminds me of us, James. Do you remember our vows under that oak tree?" James nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes, promises whispered long ago, still alive in our hearts today." Their child and partner moved into a new home. James and Emily visited often, carrying baskets of fruit and small gifts. Emily smiled. A home isn't built of bricks, it's built of laughter, shared meals, and tender moments. James added, "And with love as its foundation, no storm can ever bring it down." The day came when Emily held a tiny bundle in her arms. Tears streamed down her face. "James, we're grandparents." James, with trembling hands, stroked the baby's cheek. A new life, a fresh dawn. The story we began is now being written again. Emily whispered, "Our love has stretched across generations." As the grandchild grew, James and Emily often told bedtime stories. Once upon a time, James began, there was a boy who believed in love. The little one listened with wide eyes, Emily beside them adding, "And the secret of the story is this, love is the strongest magic of all." James and Emily walked hand in hand through the garden one evening. Emily sighed happily. "We've grown older, James, but my heart still skips when you smile." James kissed her forehead. "Time may paint our hair silver, but it cannot dim the gold of our love." The family gathered around a large table, children, grandchildren, laughter, and stories weaving through the air. Emily looked at James, whispering, This is the life we dreamed of." James nodded, his voice filled with peace. "Yes, Emily. Our legacy isn't just in our years, it's in the love that will outlive us." And beneath the stars, their hearts beat with quiet gratitude for the journey that had come full circle. James and Emily sat in their garden, sunlight filtering through the leaves. Emily whispered, "Do you remember the first day we planted these flowers?" James smiled, "Yes, and now they bloom like our love, patient, steady, timeless." Emily found an old box filled with letters James had written over the years. "James, every word feels like a heartbeat on paper." James chuckled, "And every heartbeat was for you." Their grandchild sat by their side. "Grandma, Grandpa, what's the secret to love?" Emily smiled. "Kindness, patience, and never letting go of each other's hand." James added, "And always saying, 'I love you' every single day." The leaves turned golden, drifting softly in the wind. Emily whispered, "We are like these trees, James, changing with seasons, but always standing side by side." James kissed her hand. "And in every season, my love for you has only grown stronger." One evening, Emily fell ill. James sat by her side, holding her hand tightly. "I'm here, Emily. Always." She smiled faintly. "Your love is my medicine, James. Don't ever let go." As days passed, James wrote in his journal, "Love is not measured in years, but in shared moments." And our moments have been endless. He placed the journal by Emily's bedside, a candle glowing softly nearby. Emily, weak but peaceful, looked into James' eyes. "James, thank you for a lifetime of love." James' voice trembled. "Emily, you are my heart, my home, my forever." She closed her eyes with a smile, resting in the warmth of his embrace. The family gathered, wrapping James in their love. His grandchild whispered, "Grandpa, we will carry your stories." James nodded softly. Remember, love is the strongest legacy we leave behind. One night, James dreamt of Emily, standing beneath the old oak tree where they first kissed. She whispered, "Come, James, the journey continues." With a peaceful sigh, James followed her into the light of love eternal. The family planted 2 rose bushes side by side in the garden, one for James, one for Emily. In the breeze, the roses swayed as though whispering secrets of a love that never faded. And so, their story lived on, not just in flowers and memories, but in the hearts of all who believed that love is the greatest gift of life.